A bugle. That's what he carried out of the valley. Not a trophy, not a souvenir. A warning. Because the men of the 7th Cavalry had just fought the bloodiest battle America had seen in a generation. They had landed in a valley crawling with North Vietnamese soldiers. They had held. They had bled. And they had watched their brothers die in the tall grass. But Ia Drang wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning. If you love military history, hit subscribe right now. We break down stories like this every single week, and you don't want to miss what comes next. Because here's the thing nobody talks about. Everyone knows the Battle of Ia Drang. Everyone's seen the movie. Everyone knows Hal Moore, the helicopters, the chaos. But what happened after? What happened to the men who walked out of that valley? The ones who survived when the army just sent them back in? What happened to a unit that fought not one brutal campaign, but 5 years of them? And what happened to one soldier in particular, a man his own general called the greatest platoon leader he had ever seen, who carried a battered bugle out of the jungle and decades later sang his men's songs one last time in a burning skyscraper in New York City? This is the story of the 7th Cavalry after Ia Drang, America's most battle-hardened unit, and the price they paid for it. Let's go back, way back. The American West is still wild. The Civil War just ended, and the United States Army needs cavalry units to push further into territory that isn't theirs. So they build new regiments. One of them is the 7th Cavalry. Their commander is a man you've heard of, Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, flamboyant, reckless, ambitious. The kind of officer who rides into battle with a brass band playing behind him. And the song they played? An old Irish drinking tune called Garryowen. It became the regiment's anthem. It still is today. For 10 years, the 7th Cavalry fight the Indian Wars. They ride across the Great Plains. They clash with the Sioux, the Comanche, the Cheyenne. They win some. They lose some. And then comes June 25th, 1876. The Little Bighorn. Custer leads 700 men into a valley in Montana. He divides his force. He underestimates the enemy. He thinks he's facing maybe 800 warriors. There are more than 2,000. In less than an hour, Custer and 268 of his men are dead. The 7th Cavalry doesn't disappear. It survives. It rebuilds. It carries on. And that pattern, walking into a fight that should destroy them, and somehow coming out the other side, that pattern will define this regiment for the next 100 years. Fast forward to 1965. The world looks very different now. The horses are gone. The planes are gone. Instead, there are Huey helicopters, M16 rifles, and a jungle on the other side of the planet where America is trying to stop the spread of communism. The 7th Cavalry is now part of the 1st Cavalry Division, the world's first airmobile division. No more riding into battle. Now they fly in, fast, low, and loud. The idea is simple. Take the firepower and speed of cavalry, add helicopters, drop soldiers directly onto the battlefield, behind enemy lines, deep in territory no one else can reach. It sounds revolutionary. Because it is. But there's a problem. Nobody really knows if it works yet. Nobody has tested airmobile warfare against a real enemy, a serious enemy, a professional army that knows what it's doing. That test is coming, and the 7th Cavalry is going to be the ones who take it. The men arriving in Vietnam in 1965 are young. Most of them are in their late teens or early 20s. Some have never left their home state before. They land at An Khê in the Central Highlands, carve out a base called Camp Radcliffe, and start training in this new way of fighting. They don't know yet what's waiting for them. They don't know that 60 miles to the west, in a valley along the Ia Drang River, 3 full regiments of North Vietnamese regulars are already there, waiting and studying. Because the North Vietnamese want to understand this new American way of war just as badly as America wants to prove it. What happens next will change everything. November 14th, 1965. It's just before noon. 8 Huey helicopters drop into a small clearing in the Ia Drang Valley. The clearing is called Landing Zone X-Ray. It's not much. A patch of scrub grass and stunted trees at the foot of a massive ridgeline called the Chupong Massif. The first man off the helicopter is Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore. He hits the ground, scans the tree line, and immediately knows something is wrong. It's too quiet. Moore has 395 men. His orders are to find the enemy and engage. Army intelligence told him to expect maybe one regiment in the area, maybe 2,200 North Vietnamese soldiers. The intelligence is wrong. Dead wrong. Moore's battalion has landed within walking distance of not one, but three full regiments of the People's Army of Vietnam. More than 6,000 soldiers, hidden in the jungle, watching, and the North Vietnamese aren't just there by accident. According to Brigadier General Chu Hai Man, the commander of the Central Highlands Front, his troops had spent 2 months trekking down the Ho Chi Minh Trail specifically to find the Americans. They wanted to understand how this new airmobile concept worked, how the helicopters deployed infantry, how they kept them supplied. They wanted to learn by fighting. Both sides were looking for the same thing, a test. They were about to get one. At 12:15 in the afternoon, the first shots ring out. Within minutes, the entire valley explodes. Company B moves toward a dry creek bed to establish a patrol line. They walk straight into the leading edge of the NVA attack. Within the first hour, Company B is cut off, surrounded. Most of their officers are dead or wounded. Back at the landing zone, Moore is fighting on 3 sides at once. The helicopters keep coming, 8 at a time, dropping men into a landing zone that is now under constant fire. Pilots who refuse to turn back, who keep flying in because the men on the ground need them. 2 of those pilots are Major Bruce Crandall and Captain Ed Freeman. For 14 straight hours, they fly their helicopters into landing zone X-ray under intense enemy fire. They bring in ammunition, water, and supplies. They carry out the wounded. Between them, they save around 70 soldiers. Both men will later receive the Medal of Honor, America's highest military honor. But the situation keeps getting worse. By nightfall, Moore makes a decision. He calls in Broken Arrow. It's a signal that means one thing: American unit in danger of being overrun. Send everything, every available aircraft, every available gun, every bomb that can reach this valley. The airstrikes come in so close that Moore's men can feel the heat on their faces. They hold. That night, nobody sleeps. The NVA probe the perimeter again and again. Small groups of soldiers testing for weakness, looking for a gap. There is no gap. Dawn on November 15th brings the biggest attack yet. 3 waves of NVA soldiers charging directly into the American perimeter. It nearly works. For a moment, just a moment, the line almost breaks. It doesn't. By the end of day 2, the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry, has lost dozens of men. The battalion is reduced from 395 men to around 340. Every man who can hold a rifle is holding one. And through all of it, the noise, the heat, the fear, there is one soldier who stands out. 2nd Lieutenant Rick Rescorla, platoon leader, B Company, 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry. His men call him hardcore, not as an insult, as a statement of fact. Because when the shooting starts and everyone else goes quiet, Rescorla starts singing old Cornish battle hymns from his homeland in England, songs about warriors and last stands and men who refuse to break. His radio operator later said, "We were all sitting in our holes with our knees knocking, dead guys all around us. And here comes Rick singing Cornish songs." It sounds insane. It works. By November 16th, the 1st Battalion has held for 3 full days. Relief forces arrive. The NVA pull back into the jungle. LZ X-ray is declared secure. 305 Americans are dead across the entire Ia Drang campaign. Around 2,000 North Vietnamese. America declares it a victory. But the battle isn't over, not even close. On the morning of November 17, the 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry, gets new orders: move cross-country to a clearing called Landing Zone Albany. The B-52s from Guam are coming to bomb the mountains. Get out of the way. The way it was presented to the men, it felt like an administrative move. They were going to be airlifted out. They were done. They were going home. They were exhausted. 3 days of combat, no sleep, barely any food or water. So as the column stretched out through the jungle, 550 yards of men, single file, some of them started to relax, some of them sat down, some of them fell asleep standing up. What none of them knew was that the 8th Battalion of the NVA 66th Regiment was resting just out of sight, hidden in the jungle alongside the trail. They were supposed to have withdrawn. They hadn't. At 1:20 in the afternoon, the jungle opens up. Machine guns, mortars, rifles, all at once, from every direction. The column is cut to pieces in seconds. Of the 375 men in the 2nd Battalion, 155 are killed and over 130 wounded in a matter of hours. It becomes the most costly ambush against American forces in the entire Vietnam War. In the chaos, two best friends are fighting 100 yards apart. First Lieutenant James Lawrence, First Lieutenant Don Cornett, roommates from officer school, roommates on the ship to Vietnam, platoon leaders in the same battalion. Cornett doesn't make it out. Lawrence survives, and for the rest of his life, he asks the same question every single day. Why did I deserve to live? There is no answer. There never is. The survivors of LZ Albany are pulled out as darkness falls. They leave behind a field of tall elephant grass that will haunt everyone who was there for the rest of their lives. Rick Rescorla walks out of the valley carrying one thing he didn't bring in, a battered French bugle, seized from the enemy. His division comes to see that bugle as a talisman. He doesn't know yet that he'll need it again, more than once. Act 3, The Machine Never Stops, 1966. Here's something nobody tells you about war. It doesn't pause. There's no moment after a battle where someone says, take a breath, recover, process what just happened. The Army doesn't work that way. The mission doesn't work that way. Ia Drang ends in November 1965. By January 1966, 6 weeks later, the 7th Cavalry is already back in the field. Same jungle, same enemy, same helicopters, different valley. The operation is called Masher, later renamed White Wing, because the White House decides the word Masher sounds too aggressive for the press back home. As if the name is the problem. The man leading it is Colonel Harold G. Moore. Yes, that Hal Moore, the same lieutenant colonel who commanded LZ X-Ray just 2 months earlier. Now promoted, now back, now leading a force into the Bong Son area of Binh Dinh province in northeastern South Vietnam. The target is the NVA Sao Vang Division, the Yellow Star Division. 3 full regiments dug into the hills and rice paddies around the town of Bong Son. What follows is 41 days of sustained fighting. The 1st Cavalry battles each of the 3 regiments of the Sao Vang Division one by one. By the end, more than 3,000 North Vietnamese soldiers are dead. It sounds like a victory. In many ways it is. But here's the part that starts to eat at the men who fight it. 3,000 dead, 41 days, and within months the NVA are back. New soldiers, same positions, same valleys, same villages. Operation Masher proves to be the start of a very long and deadly struggle for control of Binh Dinh province. One that will eventually cost more than 1,200 American lives, with 5,775 wounded. The math doesn't work in America's favor. North Vietnam has 200,000 young men reaching draft age every single year. America is fighting a war of attrition. Kill enough of the enemy and they'll stop fighting. But the enemy keeps coming. Every time the 7th Cavalry clears a valley, they move on. And when they move on, the NVA moves back in. It's like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. The men on the ground can feel it. They just can't say it out loud. Not yet. May 1966. Operation Crazy Horse. The Vinh Thanh Valley, Binh Dinh province. Reports come in that the VC 2nd Regiment, around 2,000 men, is planning a major attack on a special forces camp in the valley. The 1st Cavalry Division launches a multi-battalion sweep to stop them. They name it Operation Crazy Horse, named after the Oglala Sioux chief who helped destroy George Custer's 7th Cavalry Regiment at the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876. Think about that for a moment. The 7th Cavalry, Custer's old regiment, is now fighting an operation named after the man who killed them, in a different war, on the other side of the world. There's a dark irony there that isn't lost on the men. The operation runs for 3 weeks. The 1st Cavalry sweeps through the Vinh Thanh and Soi Ca valleys, chasing a VC regiment through heavily forested mountains, rising nearly 2,600 feet above the valley floor. The terrain is brutal. The heat is brutal. The enemy melts into the jungle and reappears somewhere else. It goes on like this all summer. August 1966. Operation Paul Revere. The 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry is deployed by helicopter to Landing Zone Orange, 7 kilometers southwest of LZ Oasis, near the Cambodian border. At dawn the next morning, the NVA 32nd Regiment, the same regiment that fought at Ia Drang, hits LZ Orange with mortar fire. Then comes 3 infantry assaults, one after another. The Americans call in air support. The NVA withdraw, 5 Americans dead, 40 wounded. The same regiment, the same enemy, back again. This is the reality the 7th Cavalry lives in now. Not one battle, not one campaign, but a continuous, rolling, relentless cycle of contact. Clear, move, clear again. Fight, pull back, fight again. And then something changes. In August 1966, the newly formed 5th Battalion, 7th Cavalry ships out from San Francisco. Fresh soldiers, fresh faces, young men who weren't at Ia Drang, who didn't see LZ Albany, who only know the stories. They arrive in Vietnam and are handed a rifle and a mission. The veterans look at them the way veterans always look at new arrivals, with a kind of tired sadness, because they know what's coming. These new men will learn what the 7th Cavalry already knows. Whatever unit that the enemy is patient, that the jungle hides everything, and that no matter how zero or
February 12, 1967. The 7th Cavalry goes back to Binh Dinh Province again. If that sounds familiar, it's because it is. They were here in 1966. They cleared these valleys. They fought these hills. They counted the enemy dead and called it progress, and now they're back. Because the NVA came back first. This time the operation has a different name, Operation Pershing, named after General John Blackjack Pershing, the American commander who led troops into Mexico chasing Pancho Villa in 1916 and then led the entire American Expeditionary Force in World War I. A name that implies pursuit, relentless, grinding, never-ending pursuit. It's the right name. Operation Pershing will run for 11 months. All 3 regiments of the 1st Cavalry Division are committed to this fight, including the 7th Cavalry, General Armstrong Custer's old command. Over the next year, it triggers 18 major engagements and countless skirmishes as the troopers struggle to clear tunnel and cave complexes across the Bong Son Plain. 11 months. Think about what that means for the men on the ground. This isn't a battle. It's not even a campaign. It's a way of life. Every morning you wake up in a fire base carved out of the jungle. You eat cold rations. You check your boots for scorpions. You go out on patrol. You look for an enemy that is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Some days you find them, some days they find you. Most days you walk for hours through heat that sits on your shoulders like a physical weight, and you see nothing, hear nothing. And then someone trips a wire, or a sniper opens up from a tree line 200 meters away, and in 10 seconds 3 of your friends are on the ground, and then it's quiet again. That silence after contact is something veterans never forget. It's louder than the shooting. The terrain in Binh Dinh Province is unforgiving. The Bong Son Plain sits between the South China Sea and a wall of mountains to the west. The NVA use those mountains as sanctuary. They come down to fight, then disappear back up into the jungle where American helicopters struggle to follow. The 7th Cavalry adapts. They learn to fight in the tunnels and cave complexes the NVA use as bases. Cramped, dark booby-trap passages where a man with a flashlight and a pistol goes in alone and hopes he comes out. These soldiers earn a name that tells you everything you need to know about what they do. Tunnel rats. They learn to read the jungle, to spot the signs of an ambush before it springs, a branch that looks wrong, a patch of disturbed earth, the silence of birds. They get very good at this. By the end of Operation Pershing, nearly 8,000 NVA and Viet Cong soldiers are killed or captured. It becomes the longest single operation in the entire history of the 1st Cavalry Division. But here's what those numbers don't tell you. North Vietnam has 200,000 young men reaching draft age every single year. The communists replace their losses along the border. The local Viet Cong are devastated, but the NVA simply sends more North Vietnamese regulars to fill the gaps. The bucket, the ocean, and the men of the 7th Cavalry know it, not officially, not in the briefings, but in the way a sergeant looks at a map and says nothing, in the way a veteran keeps his mouth shut when a new lieutenant talks about winning, in the way men stop writing home about how the war is going and start writing about the food, the weather, the guys in their unit. Because the guys in your unit are the only thing that makes sense anymore. That bond between men who share a foxhole, who carry each other's weight, who write the letters home when someone doesn't make it, that bond is the real story of Operation Pershing, not the body counts, not the statistics, the men. And then January 1968 arrives. The division gets new orders. Pack up, move north, all of it. 350 kilometers in a matter of days. Something is happening, something big. The generals won't say what, but the veterans can feel it. That same feeling they had before Ia Drang, before Bong Son, before every operation that turned out to be bigger and worse than anyone said it would be. That feeling in the stomach, that cold, quiet certainty. It's coming, and it's going to be bad. January 30th, 1968, the Vietnamese New Year, Tet. It's supposed to be a ceasefire. Both sides agreed to it. For one night, the war stops and Vietnam celebrates. It doesn't stop. At precisely 3 in the morning, more than 80,000 North Vietnamese and Viet Cong soldiers launched simultaneous attacks on over 100 cities and towns across South Vietnam, military bases, government buildings, police stations, the American embassy in Saigon. All at once, in one night. The scale of it is staggering. The audacity of it is staggering. For 3 years, American commanders have been saying the enemy is weakening, that the war is being won, that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
The Tet Offensive is the enemy's answer to that, and the 7th Cavalry is right in the middle of it. They had just spent 11 months grinding through Binh Dinh province, 11 months of tunnels and patrols and ambushes, and then in January the orders came. Move north, fast, all of it. The 1st Cavalry Division is ordered to move 350 kilometers north from Landing Zone English in Binh Dinh province to Camp Evans in Thu Thien province in a matter of days. The mission: support the besieged Marines at Khe Sanh and defeat any NVA attack across the DMZ. 350 kilometers. In days. They make it. But when they arrive, the world has already changed. Hue, Vietnam's ancient imperial city, population 140,000. One of the most beautiful cities in Southeast Asia, surrounded by walls and moats and centuries of history. The NVA take it in one night. 2 full enemy divisions, 10,000 soldiers, flood into the city before anyone can respond. They raise the NVA flag over the citadel. They execute government officials, teachers, anyone they identify as a threat. Mass graves will be found later. Thousands of civilians. The battle to take Hue back is unlike anything the 7th Cavalry has fought before. No jungle, no valleys, no open landing zones, streets, buildings, doorways, windows. The 5th Battalion, 7th Cavalry conducts search and clear operations along suspected enemy supply routes west of Hue. On February 7th, they make contact with a heavily entrenched NVA force and fight for 24 straight hours, trying to dislodge them. The enemy stymies their advance with heavy automatic weapons fire and mortars. This is a different kind of war. In the jungle, you can call in airstrikes. You can use artillery. You can maneuver. In a city, every building is a fortress. Every alley is a kill zone. Every step forward costs lives. The men of the 7th Cavalry adapt. Again. Because that's what they do. By late February, the NVA are driven from Hue. The Tet Offensive is broken. The NVA and Viet Cong suffer a massive defeat. 32,000 killed, 5,800 captured. Tactically, it's an American victory. But back home, nobody sees it that way. Because the American people have been told for 3 years that the war is being won. And now they're watching footage of enemy soldiers inside the American embassy in Saigon. They're watching the ancient city of Hue burn. They're watching body bags come home in numbers that don't match the optimistic briefings. Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America, goes on television and says the war is a stalemate. The American public starts to turn. But the 7th Cavalry doesn't get to watch television. They have a new mission. Khe Sanh. Since January 21, 1968, a garrison of 6,000 U.S. Marines has been surrounded at Khe Sanh Combat Base in the northwest corner of South Vietnam. The NVA have ringed the base with nearly 20,000 soldiers. They're shelling it every day. The Marines are holding, but barely. The siege has now lasted 77 days. Washington is terrified. Lyndon Johnson has a model of Khe Sanh built in the White House Situation Room. He makes his generals sign a paper saying Khe Sanh will not fall. He is thinking about Dien Bien Phu, the 1954 battle where the Vietnamese surrounded a French garrison and annihilated it. The battle that ended French rule in Indochina. He is not going to let that happen again. The mission goes to the 1st Cavalry Division. And the point of the spear, as always, is the 7th Cavalry. On April 1st, 1968, Operation Pegasus begins. The 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry air assaults into landing zone Mike. Well forward of the Marine attack, deep in territory the NVA thought they controlled. The 2nd Battalion follows them in to expand the position. The concept is pure 7th Cavalry. Don't fight your way along the road. Fly over it. Land behind the enemy. Cut them off. Force them into the open where artillery and air power can destroy them. It works. The NVA, who expected a slow, grinding advance along Route 9, suddenly find American soldiers appearing behind them from the sky. They can't respond fast enough. Day by day, the 7th Cavalry pushes forward. Landing zone by landing zone, hill by hill. The NVA fight hard. They always fight hard. But the momentum is with the Americans now. And then comes April 8, 1968. At 8 in the morning, the relief of Khe Sanh is officially complete. The 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry has cleared Route 9. The road to the base is open. The 3rd Brigade airlifts its command post directly into Khe Sanh. And one lieutenant, standing at the edge of the base that held for 77 days, looking at the Marines who fought to survive, reaches into his kit and pulls out a bugle, a captured communist bugle, and blows the cavalry charge. The notes echo across the red dirt plateau of Khe Sanh. The Marines, exhausted, filthy, some of them barely standing, hear it, and they know it's over. The 7th Cavalry came, just like they always do. Here's the thing about being the best. Someone always needs you. After Khe Sanh, the 7th Cavalry doesn't go home. There's no parade, no rest, no moment where someone says, "You've done enough. You can stop now." The war needs them. It always needs them. In May 1970, the 1st Cavalry Division crosses the border into Cambodia. The Cambodian incursion, the mission is to destroy NVA supply depots and base camps along the border. The sanctuaries the enemy has used for years to launch attacks into South Vietnam and then disappear. 5 years after Ia Drang, the 7th Cavalry is still fighting. Different country, same enemy, same helicopters, different men. And that's the part that breaks your heart, because the men of Ia Drang, the ones who survived LZ X-ray and LZ Albany, who fought through Bong Son and the An Lao Valley and Operation Pershing and Hue and Khe Sanh, most of them are gone by now, not dead, rotated home, replaced by new soldiers who weren't there at the beginning, who only know the stories, who inherit the reputation of the 7th Cavalry without having built it. The unit survives. The brotherhood survives. But the men change. And the men pay a price that doesn't show up in any after-action report. James Lawrence pays it every day. The man who survived LZ Albany, who watched his best friend Don Cornette die less than 100 yards away, who asked himself for decades why he deserved to live when Cornette didn't. Survivor's guilt is something that most people who have seen combat deal with almost daily, Lawrence said. Why did I deserve to live? I ask that question every day. I believe it is so I can share our story. So he does. He writes a book. He speaks to veterans groups. He talks to high school students. He stands in front of rooms full of people who were never in Vietnam. and tells them what it was like to march through the jungle thinking you're going home, and then suddenly have the world explode around you. He carries Don Cornette with him everywhere he goes. That's what survival costs. And then there's Rick Rescorla. Rick Rescorla doesn't pay his price in 1965, or 1966, or 1968. He pays it on a Tuesday morning in September 2001. After Vietnam, Rescorla builds a new life. He earns a law degree, he teaches, he marries, he has children, he retires from the Army Reserve as a colonel. By September 2001, Rick Rescorla is 62 years old. He is dying of terminal bone marrow cancer, and he is working as head of security for Morgan Stanley at the World Trade Center in New York City on the 44th floor of the South Tower. On the morning of September 11th, the first plane hits the North Tower. The Port Authority gets on the building's public address system and tells everyone in the South Tower to stay at their desks. Everything is fine. Don't evacuate. Rick Rescorla ignores them. He picks up his bullhorn. He starts moving through the floors, and he does what he always did at Ia Drang, in the elephant grass, with the dead around him and the NVA coming through the trees. He starts singing Cornish and Welsh battle hymns, the same songs he sang in Vietnam, the same songs that kept his men moving when everything told them to stop, floor by floor, stairwell by stairwell. Rick Rescorla evacuates 2,700 of his fellow employees from the South Tower. Then the second plane hits. His building shakes, people panic. He keeps going, keeps singing, keeps moving people toward the exits. He calls his wife Susan from inside the building. He tells her not to worry. He tells her he's never felt better. He tells her he loves her. Then he goes back in. He is last seen on the 10th floor, heading up, looking for anyone left behind. When the South Tower collapses at 9:59 in the morning, Rick Rescorla is still inside. His body is never found. The man who carried a bugle out of the Ia Drang Valley. The man his general called the greatest platoon leader he ever saw. The man his soldiers called hardcore, not as a nickname, but as a fact. Gone. But here's what Rick Rescorla understood that most people never do. It was never about the battle. It was never about Ia Drang, or Khe Sanh, or any landing zone with a letter for a name. It was about the person next to you. It was about making sure that person gets out. That's what the 7th Cavalry was. From the moment Hal Moore landed at LZ X-Ray and refused to leave until every one of his men was accounted for, to the moment Rick Rescorla went back into a burning skyscraper for 3 people he hadn't found yet. The mission isn't the objective on the map. The mission is the man beside you. That's what makes a unit legendary. Not the victories, not the body counts, not the operations with names like Masher and Pershing and Pegasus. It's the fact that when everything goes wrong, when the plan falls apart and the enemy is everywhere, and the noise is unbearable and every instinct you have says run, the 7th Cavalry stays. They always stay. From Little Bighorn to Ia Drang, to the streets of Hue, to the red dirt plateau of Khe Sanh. Gary Owen, 7th First. If this story moved you, if you want to understand more about the men who fought in Vietnam, the battles history forgot, and the price America paid in that war, make sure you subscribe. Every week we go deep on the stories that deserve more than a footnote, and if you want to keep going right now, the video on the Battle of Ia Drang itself is right there. Everything that happened before this story began. We'll see you there.